As an immigrant, I can tell you this: it's the most disheartening thing in the world to see the country you chose as your nadir, the top of what the world is. Because if you leave your country to come here, it's not because you thought your country was the wonderfulest, best place in the world, but because you saw, as thousands of immigrants that have come here saw, that you have rights. Nobody should be above the law. That was so important for me because I saw in Colombia so much corruption. I mean, I was a lawyer there and I saw it and I said, you know what? This is not me. I want to live in a country where my family name is not what opens doors, that the bribes are not what opens doors, but it's my ability to do things that opens doors. And that's gone.
Welcome to the East Anchorage Book Club. I'm your host, Andrew Gray. The purpose of this podcast is to tell the stories of Alaskans of interest and importance. Today, our guest is immigration lawyer Nicolas Olano. After high school in Florida, he moved back to Colombia for law school. After a short practice there, he decided to move back to America, and he did law school a second time in Florida. He has been practicing immigration law for the past 24 years, and he and his wife, Lara Nations, own Nations Law Group based here in Anchorage. They exclusively practice immigration law. Nicolas discusses how his practice has changed during Trump's second term and how ICE has been functioning in Anchorage. Nicolas Olano, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate you inviting me.
To get started, just tell us a little bit about your early life.
Sure. I am originally from Colombia. I grew up between Colombia and the United States. Went to high school here and went back to Colombia, studied law there, and came back to the United States. And the system is different, so I ended up studying law again, and that's how I ended up where I am right now.
You got your law degree in Florida?
That was my second law degree. I got it at the University of Miami. And the first one I got it in civil law in Colombia. So that down there it's an LLB, up here is a JD. So it's kind of like they work together.
Gotcha. Why did you want to be a lawyer in the first place?
I think that I've always had a little bit of a sense of when I perceive injustice, it triggers me, and I believe that is the seed in me that took me there.
If you had stayed in Colombia and only had your law degree that you had in Colombia, would you have practiced immigration law in Colombia as well?
Absolutely not. I was a maritime attorney over there.
That's interesting.
And when I graduated from law school in Florida, I went out to a big law firm to do international litigation. But I left big law and I ended up going to a nonprofit. It's called CASA, and for my first year over there, and then I ended up just enjoying immigration and liking what I was doing.
And what brought you to Alaska?
My wife, Laura, is from here. We met in Florida in immigration court. She was working with an attorney. She was there. And at one point, we decided to look for a place that was more family friendly. And family was here, so we came up.
How long have you been up in Alaska?
Since 2015.
Over 10 years now.
Over 10 years now. And it's interesting because we're starting to get the sense of community and the sense of we are home after this period of time, right? It takes some time to get attached to a place and really become a part of it.
I really want to talk today about what it's like being an immigration attorney in Anchorage today on January 24th, 2026. But I think it's important to talk about what it's been like, I guess, for the first 9 years that you've been up here doing immigration law.
So I'm going to go a little bit earlier, and I'm going to go all the way down to the Bush years, which is where I started my immigration practice or practicing immigration law during that time. And we were talking about the advent of 9/11 law and application with the Real ID Act and immigration enforcement. And it was harsh. It was strong. And there were arrests, there were detentions. Your clients would get detained after interviews. Your clients would get detained after hearings. It was par for the course. During the last 9 years that I was here in Alaska, it was the last of the Obama years and the beginning of the Trump era. And during the first Trump era, I have to say that there was not as much detention. I mean, basically, there was no detention. I have to say that during the last 9 years, and by numbers, we're talking about maybe a total of 80 to 100 cases of people in deportation or removal proceedings, not detained, not detained. When we're talking detained, we might be looking at 10, 12 max, and that is in a year where we're talking about, and those people were usually spirited out of Alaska really fast. But we were talking about really low numbers.
I was just going to clarify. So when you talked about the 80 to 90 deportations, what period of time was that in?
So when I'm talking about deportation, I'm talking the process. I'm not talking that somebody is arrested, detained, and being removed physically from the country, even though they're having a process before the immigration judge. I'm just talking about cases or removal cases of people that, let's say, they didn't pass that they had a criminal issue, they applied for naturalization, and then that criminal issue sent them to be deported, but they were not detained. So they had that process there.
So that's so interesting. So I guess like I mean, for a lot of us, this is new stuff that we hadn't really thought about until recently. Mm-hmm. So somebody had applied for naturalization and it turned out they had a criminal record. And so it was denied. And ultimately they were going to be deported. But while they were waiting to be deported, they were not detained. So
correct.
They were living at home with their family or whatever.
Correct. And let me clarify something. When I say 80 or 100, I'm not talking about 80, 100 new cases. I am talking about possibly throughout that time, those 80 or 100 cases being the same. If you look at numbers since 1990, we are talking about total deportation up to, and I'd say 2018, 19, around 2,000 and some removal or deportation cases.
From
right?
Alaska.
In Alaska. 2,000, that is nothing. That
right, is over like almost a 30-year period.
Almost a 30-year period, and that is almost nothing. Then comes 2020 and post-pandemic, those 80, 100 cases shot up to around 500, okay? Not because we had enforcement, but because we had people arriving through the border. So that large wave that entered through the border also came to Alaska and went up 5 times the number of removal cases, deportation cases that we had. We ended up with 500 cases at a time during a year, right? Now, that change, you asked me now, today.
Right. So after 2020, it shot up to 500 because there had been a massive increase in folks coming across the lower 48 south border. Right. And did it stay like that? Was it like 500 in 2021 and 2022? Or
so it slowly grew, right? It just started growing and growing and growing. And then now that we're here at this stage, that number is increasing and decreasing at the same time. Why? Some of those folks have been detained and deported. Why? Because they had their case in court, immigration court, and deportation, and they had a DUI, an OUI, and then immediately they, under this new policies, ICE put their ICE on them. So they were detained, removed, and those cases went down. But also other individuals who either had some criminal post-immigration or different issue have also been placed in removal proceedings. So those numbers have increased. Also, people that have been in cases here that are detained are sent to Tacoma. So that reduces the number of cases that we have in Alaska.
So when they get transferred to Tacoma, it's no longer an Alaska case. It's no longer a deportation from Alaska.
It's a federal system. Why do I call it for Alaska? Because we're very separate. We're almost, I don't want to call it a different country, but we are very far away. And I've really realized how far away with the detainees and the detention work that we've had, because you can just, the weight that it has, the effect on the family. When we talked about, for example, the 40 individuals that were brought out from the lower 48, how they were affected, it's that what makes me realize, like, man, we are far away, and we need our own, I would say, policing of the immigration police here, if you want to call it that. Or hey, we have different needs, we have different scenarios in Alaska that we're not going to see in the lower 48. Just start by distance, just start by communication, and
Well,
and
I want to drill down a little bit more on the numbers because I'm learning something new. So, when
yeah,
the reporting says that in previous years prior to 2025, that we were detaining 13 to 15 people, and then in 2025, 99 people were detained. So, it's a
yeah,
massive increase in the number of detainments. But you're
correct.
talking about the 500 or so being deported. It's because the vast majority of people being deported were not in detainment. Is that correct?
Absolutely right, Andrew. That is correct. Those people had been allowed, or what we call paroled at the border, allowed, legally came in because they presented themselves at the border to be placed into removal proceedings in order to ask for asylum. That is a legal process contemplated in the law. So when they say you are an illegal immigrant, that is not correct. These people are following a process. They're following something that is set in the law. So we should not call it illegal. But
Gotcha.
on the numbers, Andrew, absolutely, that is absolutely right.
So, what is your job? Yeah, actually, just tell me what you do. Like if it's decided that somebody is going to be deported, are you able to reverse it, or is your job more to help make sure that somebody doesn't ever have that finding that they should be deported? I mean, I guess just drill down. What's your day to day
So
work?
there are different paths and different avenues, but let's talk about the most familiar one that somebody gets. They're driving home or they're driving to work. They get detained. They get arrested by ICE and they get taken into custody. What is my job there? I think it's very mistaken, or it's not right to think that having a lawyer by your side is going to stop ICE from picking you up. If ICE wants to pick you up, they're going to detain you. They're going to arrest you. Period. End of story. It's just like if a police officer came and they wanted to arrest you, they're going to arrest you because they have a warrant for your arrest. And by the way, I want to say it in Alaska. What I've seen is we do not. We've had very few arrests that come from somebody getting picked up and another person being with them. It has happened, but on very few occasions. So that's not something, we're not seeing like mass arrests or something like that. We're seeing targeted arrests. But my job is to first determine, can I get this person out on a bond? That's the first thing I do. To do that, I need to know, hey, do you have a case? Can I defend you in front of that immigration judge and say, hey, judge, this person should not be deported from the United States, removed from the United States for X, Y, or Z. And under that X, Y, or Z, not only can I get him to stay, judge, but then go back and say, I can also get him a bond so he can be like these people used to be with their family while that process is pending. So that is my job in some of those cases.
So you're not able to stop the deportation, but you're able to make it so that they're not living in detainment. They are able to stay with their family as the removal proceedings move forward.
That is something I can do. I can also go and I can say, well, this detention was not according to regulation and law, due process, and judge, please throw those charges away. I can say that now. I can do that. But being realistic, in our chessboard here, the judges in Tacoma, people that are picked up in Alaska, are held in ACC for a couple of days, taken to Tacoma. And over there, those judges are very reticent to say there was a Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment violation, and I'm going to throw this immigration case out. So from one thing is we have in the books, another thing is what's going to happen. And in the scenario that we're seeing where people are getting picked up, that I would say my job is. Also, maybe I can't get you out of the bond. There's no possibility of me taking you out, but I have a case to fight for you, and I can fight it in detention. And that is something also that immigration attorneys and I do. That's what we can do within this context, apart from many other things that we do, like somebody got married or there's a business petitioning for employer. a series of other things that don't involve this area of removal and detention.
So you said that in Alaska, we're not seeing these, I guess, mass detainments or there's stories. There was a story of a woman like walking to work and she got caught up in like a chaotic raid on some street vendors and she was held for a couple of days and she was actually like a US citizen. She just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. We're not seeing things like that in Anchorage or in Alaska. It's targeted. They're going after one specific individual. So it's more, I guess, more organized and less dangerous is what's happening here.
I do think so. So just so you know, there's a file. When starts, there's a file. I've seen those files. There's a huge picture of the individual on the left side of that file. They know who they're going to. They are going to be following that individual perhaps for a day or two before, or they're going to be staking out. So it's a planned process.
Why don't they just go knock on the person's door?
I think they don't want to get into the issues of warrants, but hold on, they have done it. They have gone to some people's houses and, hey, are you home? I would say that is the exception, not the rule. I mean, just legally, it's cleaner for them to just do a stop of a vehicle from somebody leaving their home, a couple of blocks from their home, going to work, than actually going to the home and knocking. Now, in the lower 48, and what I've seen in the past, and I'm talking about, let's go back to Obama and Bush years, is an officer would knock on the door and they try to go into the house, and then everybody in the house would get arrested. Not that we have not seen here. I don't know if we're seeing in the lower 48. It is possible, but that we're not seeing here. It might be a reason of manpower. It might be a reason because they don't want to do stuff like that, but we're not seeing that, fortunately, right now in Alaska.
Right. Well, we're talking today on Saturday, January 24th. There was a ICU nurse who was just killed in Minneapolis at a protest. I think, you spoke earlier about Alaska being so separate from the lower 48, and it sounds like the ICE activity here is also very separate from the types of activity that we're seeing in Minneapolis, for example. Is there anything that's concerning you about the uptick in detainments that we've seen in the last year?
I think that a lot of these people should not be detained because they have good cases or because, and this is something that I've seen. So the laws have been the same. I mean, if you really stand between, apart from case law, right? If we understand that case law from the courts has changed in some ways, but the laws that are on the books are basically the same. And what we really are seeing is a change in the use of discretion. In cases where people would have found relief via discretion given by ICE, ICE has a lot of discretion. Like a police officer in the street, they have a lot of discretion. He has to say, I'm not going to give you a ticket. I'm going to let you go with the warning. That is the use of discretion. That is not being used anymore. And any chance that ICE or the agencies that are helping them, HSI, see somebody and find somebody that is undocumented, they will detain them. And they will not allow for a bond. So they become very strict on that. Now you ask me, what is a good case? For me, that is a case that the person should be released, is a case where I have clear relief, I have no criminal issues, and it doesn't necessarily be a lengthy stay, but as the relief gets weaker, the stay should get longer and the community ties should get larger. So let's say a gentleman came a year ago on his tourist visa. He got married. He found the love of his life and they got married, and they petitioned for him and immigration picked him up. Okay. That is a good case because I can easily bond him out and I have clear relief. Okay. What is a hard case for me? A gentleman or a person or whatever came in a year ago, same amount of time, but came through the border, asked for asylum, is in the proceedings. Unfortunately, he decided one day to drink, drive. He got picked up. ICE came, picked him up. What's going to happen at that bond hearing is the judge says, well, you're a flight risk because you don't have ties to the community. You've been here too short. You're also a danger to the community. The Trump administration upped the weight that DUI and driving offenses have. So they're going to say, I'm not going to give you a bond. And then we have to look at that asylum case. And in detention, it's going to be harder to win. And, I have to make that analysis and tell the person, well, I've seen asylum cases before. I think yours is good. And I think that even though it's good, you have a 30%, 40% chance of winning that case, just statistically. So that is kind of like good, bad case. And I'm looking at the good or the bad for the possibility of getting them out of detention.
When you were talking earlier about ICE having packets, and you've seen the packet on the left side, it's a large photo of the person. Where does ICE get the list? Do you know how they find these people?
Honestly, I do not. I think I have intuition as to maybe somehow. Right now, the access that ICE has to databases, the access that we as private individuals have to each other's information is ridiculous. I mean, our movements are being coordinated by our phones. So ICE is just buying that and connecting the dots with AI. I mean, and I think that they know more than we can even imagine. In a past case or a recent case, I had the deportation officer tell the client, you travel with XXX people when he wasn't near the airport or anything. This means that somehow they got the information from either video or from TSA. So I think they're just getting it from
That's interesting.
pro.
When I last spoke to you was when you testified at the House Judiciary hearing about the 40 ICE detainees being held at Anchorage Correctional Complex. And the bulk of that hearing was about the conditions of detainment. And what I think the hearing brought to light was that those folks were entitled to certain rights and privileges that the traditional incarcerated population was not. Are you finding that for the folks that you're representing that are currently being detained, has the conditions of detainment improved since last summer? Has it changed? I mean, do you think folks are getting the rights and privileges that they're entitled to?
Yes and no. So what's happened is the following with Alaskan detainees. And so everything is changing. Our tactics and strategies have been changing at the same time. Due to those 40 people that were here, we realized how bad the conditions for people in detention here were. And we started saying, okay, let's allow detainees to go to Tacoma. Let's take them to Tacoma and they will be in better conditions over there. We'll try to do their bond hearing there and let's move on that line. But what is new is these Alaskan detainees are now being moved down to Texas, Mississippi, and other states, making representation very difficult. And when we talk about going back to the beginning, we're talking about, hey, Alaska is different. One thing is being in Tacoma and Washington, but when your family is in Alaska and the detained person is in Texas, just as a family matter, it's absurd. And then as a matter of representation, it makes it really hard. Communication, a series of things, which even this new digital age, it changes and it's more difficult. The ICE officers down in Texas, they couldn't care less. That person's from Alaska. They don't matter. And their lawyer doesn't matter. So it changes. Yeah.
I guess for folks who are watching the news and listening to this just because they want to learn more about Alaska in particular, is there anything that we haven't covered that you want folks to know?
I think there's a change in strategy by ICE here, and that is to I don't think that they're impeding individuals from calling or reaching out to family in order to get representation, but there is being an uptick in people that pass unperceived. So at the beginning of the year, last year, at the beginning, middle of the year, we were seeing with the folks from the ACLU that, hey, these are the people that are being detained. These individuals are now picked up. We would get the information. Now those detentions are, let's call them submarines or underwater. They're quiet. So they kind of dropped off the map. We're just finding this. We got this list and wow, this large number of individuals that got picked up in the last 3-4 months that just didn't ring anybody. So it didn't come up on anybody's radar. So there must have been a shift in the tactics that ICE is using. So what I would do if I were somebody interested in trying to learn and help is tell people that they need to call out, that they need to say to somebody, hey, call a lawyer, call the ACLU, call Nicholas, call somebody to let them know that I'm detained. Because we can do things here that if they end up in that tumultuous, huge, enormous place, the Northwestern President Center is, they're going to get lost down there. Here, there's somebody that is, let's call them special. There's going to be lawyers that are closer, faster, and know their situation. So that is something that I would tell you, hey, I want to move in that way. I want to educate people more of that, because that's what we're seeing. I'm seeing folks that they didn't even pop on the radar at all for me or for anybody else. So that is concerning.
Well, and that brings me, I guess, to conclude, you and your wife own
Mhm.
a law firm. And is this exclusively the type of law that you guys do?
Absolutely. Yeah, I've been doing it for 24 years. Laura's been doing it since 2013. Yeah, that's.
Do you guys have, I mean, do you feel maxed out, or do you feel like you guys could take more clients if needed?
We could take more clients. It's interesting, but actually a number of clients has gone down in comparison to previous years. People are scared to go and, hey, get their green card, to ask to become a citizen. So those concerns are there, and that affects just the numbers. And for example, what I was telling you just now, the number of detainees has been steady, but the number of people reaching out for help has gone down. And that is something that is weird. That is interesting.
Well, and do you think that that's a factor of all of the publicity about folks being arrested when they show up for their immigration appointments at courthouses, and because there's this fear that if they start, talking to a lawyer and going through the process, that they're going to be more easily identifiable and they'll be caught. They'll be captured.
Absolutely. But this is a strategy, right? This is Miller's strategy. Miller's strategy is not to actually deport people. It's not just the sheer numbers of deportations. It's not the sheer numbers of people I am denying visas. It's the number of people I'm getting to self-deport and to never even ask to come to the United States. Why am I going to come to the United States if I also have family in somewhere else and I can go there? Or why am I going to ask for naturalization if they can remove me? Or why am I going to stay here trying to work on my papers and have a positive life in the United States? If look at the nightmare that is out and down there in the lower 48. And one thing that is very scary for folks here is to see the violence down the lower 48 and not comprehend that maybe right now it's not here in Alaska. So It's very hard to watch a screen and see this is what immigration is doing, and at least it's not in my backyard right now. And I hope.
And of course, we're talking about Stephen Miller, who is the deputy chief of staff for Donald Trump and is the mastermind behind the deport 1 million people in 1 year policy, which has led to the massive increase in ICE.
I mean, they're asking for 3,000 immigration arrests a day.
Right, which they failed. It's like, I mean, they haven't been able to achieve that. And I talked about this with Anna Taylor.
She's wonderful.
Anna Taylor was talking about that, they're taking the lowest hanging fruit. They've got to meet a quota. And so it's not going to be met with folks who are at jail. So they're going to pick up folks who are doing everything the right way because they're in the system and they can be found.
Correct. And here's the interesting thing also from a legal point of view. This is maybe directed to lawyers, but it is harder to deport and remove a permanent resident that has a criminal record. It is way harder to do that than it is to pick up an individual that has no criminal record and simply has no documents. So when you talk about low-hanging fruit, they are going after these lower folk who have been here for 20 years, have paid their taxes, have children, have family, do not have a single criminal transgression, but they do not have a green card. Much easier to pick that person up and deport them than it is to pick up maybe that permanent resident who robbed a store, shot a gun into the air. It is complexity-wise much more difficult.
That's very interesting. I just assume that most of the folks that you represent don't have a lot of money and aren't going to be able to pay a lot of money for a lawyer.
True.
And so, I guess I'm curious, how do you make ends meet? Do you have enough folks? Yeah.
So here's the thing. Immigration attorneys usually charge a flat fee. And It is because if we charge hourly, we would be unaffordable. That is a reality. So our fees are lower. At least in our office, we give payment plans because we have to. And sometimes you just end up doing more work than you have to, at least. And I have to tell you, in the criminal side, those criminal cases that we're talking about just now, I am passionate about them. I enjoy doing them. So sometimes you end up just doing stuff for free, and it's fine. Sometimes you gotta do what you have to do for what you believe in. And as an immigrant, I can tell you this: it's the most disheartening thing in the world to see the country you chose as your nadir, the top of what the world is. Because if you leave your country to come here, it's not because you thought your country was the wonderfulest, best place in the world, but because you saw, as thousands of immigrants have come here, saw that you have rights. Nobody should be above the law. That was so, so important for me because I saw in Colombia so much corruption. I mean, I was a lawyer there and I saw it and I said, you know what, this is not me. I wanna live in a country where my name is not and my family name is not what opens doors, that the bribes are not what opens doors, but it's my ability to do things that opens doors. And that's gone. That is the most difficult part, at least, and this is more of from an immigrant, I'm telling you this, than even a lawyer. I mean, it's just seeing how if you pay, you can get away with murder. You pay and you get away with defrauding $1.6 billion from people just because you give money to Trump. So, I mean, at least for me, that has been emotionally very hard because it's like you put your lives and your emotional goal as to this is my country, this is what this stands for, and now it's gone.
I was at a conference last year, and the former mayor of Bogota was the keynote speaker. I think she was the first openly lesbian mayor in South America of a major city. And she was awesome. She was an amazing speaker. But she talked about how the tables were flipping and that Colombia had really cleaned up its act in a lot of ways. Is that your assessment as well?
Absolutely. It's horrible. And it's just, yeah, no, absolutely. It is. I wish I could say it is not, but I am heartbroken because of that fact.
Yeah. Nicolas Olano, thanks so much for being on the show today. This was really interesting.
Thank you, Andrew.
If folks, for whatever reason, would need to get in contact with your firm, what's the best way to do it?
907-770-0909, or just look us up on the web at Nations Law Group.
Nations Law Group. Thank you so much and best of luck.
No, thank you, Andrew. Take care of yourself.
Thank you, listeners. If you like what you heard, please subscribe, rate, and review us. To contact me, email rep.andrew.gray@akleg.gov.